3.
It was perhaps typical of my companion that for no more than this slim provocation, he was willing to risk life and limb in the wildest and most barren places imaginable. Or perhaps it was typical of the effect of gold fever on all his people, as I was later to see the lure of that glittering metal had a terrifying and potent power in the minds of all of that ancient race. In any event, the decision to travel beyond the Empire's most southernmost borders was a fateful one, and it led to adventures, the dreadful consequences of which haunt me still.
I'll be honest, I didn't listen to a word of that. And now, I normally don't listen to your quotes. I make, a storied point of it. But in this case, I was opening up the YouTube backend and realized by doing so I had obscured our cameras. And thus, no one could see us. So, I think you got to miss the fact that I pulled a face of, oh, I fucked up. But I have since resolved, so we can all be seen here, which is excellent stuff. Hope you're all doing well on this fine Tuesday. And last week, for me, I don't know about you, last week absolutely shot by, but this week is dragging, which, you know what, I'm not upset about. It's nice to have a little bit more of a relaxed week, because I just know as soon as that FAQ drops, which is probably going to be next week, it is going to be, I'm going to be very busy, because not only will I be doing the content side of things, that's when everyone's going to be wanting to talk to me about the FAQ and do all my coaching sessions, which is great. So, it's going to be interesting. I will book a couple of days off just so I can wrap my head around everything and get some videos out, and then it'll be straight, nose to the grindstone. But also, I'm going to be coming to the Saffron Slam, of which is basically sold out, although I think there is still a couple of tickets on Sunday for like 1 day play. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've got 32 players, all sold out, so that's really exciting. We're the biggest Saffron Slam we've done to date, which is really, really exciting.
Nice.
And yeah, how I tend to do it is people can buy 2 day tickets, that's absolutely fine, but I also am happy to sell 1 day tickets for people that can just make the Saturday or Sunday. So what will currently be at the moment is there'll be a couple of players after the Saturday heading home. So that means there are some Sunday tickets left. So obviously they're much cheaper tickets because you only play 2 games. But if someone, especially people I found with kids and things like that, 2 games is, I mean, it's a day out, but it's 9 till 3, so you can still be there for getting kids up in the morning and being back for tea time or bedtime as well. So and get 2 games of Old World in at the same time. So if you want to come on the Sunday, it'll be the 8th of February. You'd be absolutely more than welcome. You just need to drop me a message because you can't buy a ticket. You just click on the link and it'll take you to an email address that will take you to me, and I'll sort you out a Sunday ticket. And that'll be really exciting because that means we get 32 and we don't have any dropouts from the first day. So that'd be excellent.
Very cool. Very cool. Great stuff. So if you're here and you haven't already, please do give the stream a thumbs up. Helps us get picked up by, I still need like a button that I can press so I can be like, the algorithm, and add some sort of spooky sound effect on it. For truly, in the modern world, who isn't terrified of AI ruining their job? I am.
Quite a lot.
Because whatever the algorithm does, it's either going to promote me or not, and both of those are terrifying. Anyway, back to reality. We've got some usual faces here in chat. Good to see you all. I want to start off with Optimus D, who says, who's playing Old World? I can tell you it's no one with kids. I would say you're emphatically wrong. I think, especially like even the Masters. So if we're talking the highest level of play in the country, I think a good like third at least of the people there had kids. Now, I didn't go round and tally. I didn't take a census. But from personal interactions with people, I believe a lot of them have kids. Or maybe it's just the perception, and, Steve Toll with his 37 kids is skewing the analytics. It's like, well, actually, there's more kids than players because of one man in the Northeast. The Toll clan has expanded as well. They seem to have taken Keith Wilkinson and Jack Ward under their wing as well. So there's just, anytime you look, there's going to be more Tolls at events in the Northeast, especially. Callum says, do Lewis's glasses get slowly bigger every week? That would be a great bit. Do they get bigger every week? Are you just shrinking? Have you reached that point in your life where you're wisening away like a raisin?
I think I've reached the point where I'm running out of hair, so that actually, in comparison to everything else, it looks like the glasses are getting bigger, but I'm just reducing the amount of hair I've got.
You know what?
So
That's fair. That's fair. Cool. We'll move on from there. Amy says FAQ blues. Yeah. That is true. Thank you, Skaven Spawn. Says well done on the Masters performance. Obviously came in 6th. Did do a stream last Tuesday, I think it was, talking about it. Thank you. Where I got to talk to the number 1, 2, and 3 player. I didn't really talk about my experiences because they're less interesting than the people who did well. So that's that. I guess I could briefly summarize. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that. We'll see. Tanako resubbed for 7 months. Thank you very much. Who's playing the old world? Your mum and I. My mother would not play Warhammer. She has expressed distaste in it to the point of getting lost in the retail estate where Warhammer World is. And this is back before they opened it up and there was the tram line. So it was a real labyrinth to find around. And it was the middle of summer, or at least spring, and she shouted loudly while the windows were down, "I hate Warhammer World," because she was struggling to find the place. And there was, with a comedy undertone, but it was real. There was it was real hatred for the place that she couldn't find, that me and my brother had begged her to take us to while we were in the area.
I don't remember Warhammer World pre-tram lines. I must have been very young when it was pre-tram lines.
Yeah, well, it was the same. It's just getting there that was a bit harder. And I guess you weren't navigating there because you were a child.
No, often on coaches, which actually, when you come to think of it nowadays, like, I don't think it'd be acceptable now. We used to go to, like, the local Games Workshops all around us in, like, Colchester, Chelmsford, Southend. They used to hire a coach that would pick people up from, like, Southend at, like, 4 a.m. on a Saturday, then go to Chelmsford, then go to Colchester, and go all the way to Warhammer World. We'd have a day of gaming, then drive back. But it would just be like 3 or 4 Games Workshop staff, and then like 70 kids all in this bus.
The numbers on safeguarding there are a little off.
Do that.
Yeah, but I do want to touch on something you just said. Speaking of hiring coaches, if you're interested in getting better at the old world, I'm running a sale for 25% off your first month of coaching this month. I'm smooth with it. I'm getting good. Use the discount code 3555D. It's in the description, and you can use that on Patreon to get 25% off your first month of coaching. And this is a great time to pick up because there's going to be the FAQ coming pretty darn soon. If you get coaching now, you have until the 20th of February to get the session in. So don't feel like, you book it and you only get it for February. You can pay now with the discount and then get the benefit of looking at the FAQ stuff. All right. Now that I've successfully plugged, who else we got? We got Ptolemy here. Good to see you. Mosley99, excited for my first Saffron Slam. Very nice. Orcboy Phil reminding me to do my job. Muchos apreciado. Like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Also says also 6th is good. Yeah, I'm really happy with 6th. The sort of realistic goal going in was minimum top half, and I'd really wanted to be in top third and achieve that, obviously. Callum is trampilled. This fits very much with your character, Callum. I'm not going to expand on that, but I'm not surprised. That said, I agree. I definitely, in the before times, when I wasn't single, went on a tram date with someone, I'd been in a long-term relationship with, and we just like went from one end to the other. We went to a garden centre and had coffee and cake there. It was great. Trams are like a good novelty. If you're using them every day, it's just public transport.
Did you go on a date to a garden centre?
Yeah. I'm both 32 and 300. And I have no shame for that.
And still single.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah, I appreciate that. I will say, not that, this is something that I necessarily want to get into with the internet, but I have started dipping my toe into the dating pond, not necessarily to actively look for someone. I'm, I guess, now about 6 months out from ending my 7-year relationship, but this is about the time where I'm like, I'm gonna see how things are, and maybe it would be nice to go and just talk to someone and have a coffee, but we will see. Maybe it'll be terrible, and maybe nobody will love me and I will die alone. These are the options.
Keep an eye on your daughters, the people of Nottingham.
Jesus.
They may end up.
What aspersions? Okay, I was going to say, like, what are you trying to accuse me of? You might have, a nice young man might take her out for a respectful chat and some caffeine.
You could go a ride on a tram and get some roses on the way back.
Well, I do. Hold on now. Let's. You don't want to set up some unrealistic expectations. Buying flowers for someone on the first date, I feel like, is a very expensive habit that you could be extending on. Anyway, moving on to something more interesting than my potential dating life. So. Cool. I think, yeah, we're out of messages that are relevant to Warhammer and just people just responding to the things I've said, which is great, and I have read them and I appreciate it. So we wanted to talk about a couple of bits and pieces. First of all, let's go with your hobby update, because there's been a pretty swanky dwarf on the screen. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, this is none other than Gotrek Gurnason, and those of you who were listening at the start to the quote, which I'm sure you all tune in for, the main reason you're here is a quote from Gottrek's and Felix book. This was a model, not one of mine, not technically my hobby, I guess it's work hobby, but I painted this for Tom, who was a recent winner of a Most Sporting Opponent award at Saffron Slam. And what I do for those winners is paint up an infantry model of their choice. And Tom has given me permission to share the photo because he's absolutely happy with it, which is really great. And I thought, do you know what, painting a dwarf, nice and easy. I've had a win there. It's not going to take me that long because they're not very big. But then he's on a base that's about 4 times the size he is.
Yep.
So I much lost all of the charm I was making up on painting such a small mini to paint like 5 Skaven models at the same time. That he's just standing on the corpses of.
Yeah.
It looks really cool. I'm really happy with how it's come out. Tried to play around with some tattoos, which you can't really see in the photo, but there are tattoos on his arm and chest and head. So we'll see. Hopefully, Tom's not seen him in person yet, so camera can do wonderful things for a mini.
That's true.
Hopefully, assuming he likes him in person, then yeah, that'll be really good. And Tom is coming to the Slam in February, and he is bringing an all Slayer army. So it's really good to see that. Definitely not come last, and see how we go. I think I have waived the normal rule of 3 for the Slayer army because I don't have that many different units. So I think he might be bringing 8 of the Doom Seekers. But I figure for Slayers, I feel
Well, I think that's also technically correct. Like,
yeah,
it's not how I necessarily think the spirit of it is meant to be, but also for Doomslayer, screw it. Like, just do what you want, man. That's
what I thought. I was like, if someone comes and breaks the game with a Slayer list because I've allowed them to have a few extra Doom Seekers, then I'll take that risk.
I'll be happy to come second at that event. Fan Dabby Dozy. And do I want to talk about Masters? I guess I just like to, for anyone who didn't see the episode that I did last week, again, thank you to Charlie, Pash, and Steve. I was going to call him Simon. There, no, it's not Steve. Hold on, my brain's just turned off. He is called Steve, isn't he?
Yeah.
No, it's Steve.
Graham, Bob, Tim, Peter.
I'll come back to you. I genuinely don't know what just happened there. I think I had.
Is my camera broken? Is my microphone broken? What's going on?
No, it's just my brain. It's just my brain. Anyway, Scott, whose name I've now remembered. I had to look at a picture of him to remind me. I was desperately looking in the background for name, and as soon as I saw that face and big white beard, I was like, yeah, Scott, there we go, got him. Sorry, Scott. Anyway, thank you to Charlie, Scott, and Pash, even Pash, for coming on, having a good chat about the Masters. We probably don't need to talk about it very much, but I will just say, yeah, it was a good time. It was nice to get to a Forgotten North. I wouldn't have bothered otherwise, because for me it's 4 hours of travel, but it's also 4 changes on the train, so it's like an absolute pain in the backside to get to. But I will also say thank you to my mate Craig, who for Christmas completely, I told him not to get me anything and he did anyway because he's lovely and also a bastard, got me a nice carrying case that I could put not only my models in, but then also had space for all of my clothes and accoutrements as well. So actually, the travel was pretty painless. I only had to lug one bag around.
That is a great present. That's a very thoughtful present as well, Craig. Well done.
Yeah, I know. Don't tell him that. He'll get a big head. It's unnecessary and unwarranted. But Pash is here. If you mention my name 3 times in the mirror, I will appear behind you. That sounds about right. You are some sort of,
demon.
Demon that is only whispered about in folklore from the 1400s. Yeah, so let's not say the P word again, otherwise he might rock up. But yeah, no, I had a good time. The venue, like the actual play space, was good, and yeah, screw it. If you want to know more, go and watch last week's live stream, but not until this one's done, because obviously we're in the middle of talking about some interesting bits and pieces. Let's Postmaster's Patch Googles his name. I bet he's in all of the Discord searching Patch in quotes so he can see if anyone's talking about him. I can't do that because close order is a rule. So if I was to put close order into one of the big Warhammer Fantasy Discords, you know what it would come up with? Like, yeah, so I've been looking at Swordmasters. I think the fact they've got close order is really useful. I'm like, you know what? Sound that's
I think
great.
we're onto something.
It's good because it keeps the ego in check, because I can't go and hunt my information about me down. Lovely stuff. Okay, the meat and potatoes of the episode. You wanted to talk about a little, and I say little entirely sarcastically, document that's been posted. Is it 72 pages? The full report.
Settle in, everybody.
I have told him that I have a bit of a time limit on what I'm wanting to talk about today. So don't worry, it's not just going to be reading slide by slide. You might be surprised to hear that Lewis is actually pretty okay at presenting. Doesn't do that thing that you did in secondary school, where you're like, here's a full word page of text, and then I turn around when I'm presenting in front of the class, reading the entire thing. So it should be painless, despite the fact it's a PowerPoint. Don't worry about the fact I'm clicking about slides. Just enjoy the experience.
To be fair, I am one of those people, like, so I have to do a lot of presenting to members of the public and stuff as part of my job. My slides are 99% literally just a photo, and then I'll talk. And I tend to find that works better than any kind of reading of slides, even if you have like brief notes on the slides.
I agree.
But because I'm not like lecturing, although I am giving a lecture at the University of Hertfordshire next month after, which is very exciting. I've never done that before. I feel like I'm reaching an important professional milestone where I can start lecturing people on urban pollution. But I've got a talk for 2 hours, which so I'm just doing a little bit prep here. This session's only going to be an hour and 45, so it should be absolutely fine. But no, we're here to talk about Old World, obviously. And this, I wanted to talk about this survey, Ed, because I think the work that's been done to put it together has been excellent. Mm-hmm. And actually, for those of you in the chat who organise events, I think I would recommend you give this a read and spend some time looking at it, because it gives you some really good feedback from a decent chunk of the community that go regularly to events. There's a lot of feedback about what people like about events, what they don't like about events, what they think about comp, what they think about all different things that make an Old World tournament. So we'll obviously flick through very quickly, and I'll pick out some key points, but would encourage everybody to go to the survey and grab the link to this and read it through in full. Read the analysis.
Even edit it into the description now while you're.
You hero. I think there's a QR code. I don't know how small that'll be on people's screens, but you can also, if you're not on it, there's a UK and Ireland Old World Masters Discord, and it's the top post the announcements channel at the moment, shared by Richard Manklow. He is the vice chair of Team England, and conveniently for the organisers of all these events and the Masters, he's also runs a research company called Pathway UX Research. So actually, this isn't just a survey put together by someone like me that hasn't got a clue how to do a proper survey. He's actually done this properly, and he's brought sort of a level of professionalism to the analysis that goes above anything that I could ever achieve just as a TO in one part of England. So I guess big thanks to Rich for putting it together. And he's been so helpful in explaining results. You can message him in the channels on Discord, and he'll absolutely come back with his thoughts on why a number is X instead of Y and things like that. It's been really useful. But really, the survey just aims to get the view of people who have been to Old World tournaments in 2025, find out what they enjoyed, and find out what events could do better in the future, and what people thought about the Masters and the ranking system overall. And yeah, we had over 200 events last year that found their way onto the Old World Rankings website. So a lot of the sort of base data has come off the Old World Rankings website in addition to the survey. So that scrapes BCP and new recruit pretty regularly, but I'll be relatively confident there will be Old World tournaments that aren't included here because they run on a different system. So have a look at Old World rankings as well if you do run events, and if your event's not on there, see if you can run it in a way such that Gomo can get it onto the rankings website so that it can feature in this data in the future.
Yeah. Although I would say I think the vast majority of events, especially here in the UK, are run in a way that can go up on
get on here quite easily.
Old World rankings. And I think the ones that don't are the ones that it's like, I'm going to run a narrative event where there's 6 of us and I'm running it through a spreadsheet, which is maybe not necessarily representative of like tournament data. It might be more like a league or something like that.
Yeah. No, 100%. And so, in that 200 events, they've had over 1,200 unique players attending. So I think when you consider that probably the event-going community in any of Games Workshop's games is probably quite a small percentage of people actually go to tournaments. So to have 1,200 different people, over 1,200 people attending an event, I think it's a really healthy number, I think.
I had a conversation, just to jump in, with someone from Games Workshop. What day is it? Tuesday. So it was literally 2 days ago. I had a conversation with someone from Games Workshop who doesn't work on the rule side of things, works on the more model painting side of things. And they said that it's somewhere in the realm of like 70 to 80% of the people who are involved in Warhammer don't even play. I'm not talking about competitive level. It's just like if you're looking at like a pyramid, down at the bottom you've got the people who build and paint models because they like them. Then you've got the like top 20% of the triangle or the pyramid is the people who are like, I play games from once a year to however frequently, and then the top little nugget there is the competitive play.
Oh, that's really interesting. So actually, it's a small percentage of the people that play games probably then go to tournaments.
Sure.
And people that play games is actually only 20% of the community in the first place. So, and for the Old World community to have 1,200 people attending events in the UK and Ireland, that's, I think, when you start scaling that up to potentially the people who are involved in the hobby, suggests probably Old World's in quite a healthy place.
I agree. I think also Old World is doing a pretty good job of converting people who wouldn't necessarily have gone to tournaments to go to smaller events, especially the one-day ones. So, I think we've got a good chunk of people who are willing to try, if only just to be like, hey, I want to play some games. What sounds like a great way to do that? Let's play 3 games over the course of a day. That's an easy way to get some Warhammer in.
No, absolutely. And I think, so Rich got 207 responses to the survey, which is about 17% of the people who go to events. So he has... So, I said to Rich when I was going to present this in the show, he was like, I said, is there anything you need me to tell him? Tell everybody. And he's like, no, just go for it. But broadly, there are a couple of things that we should bear in mind before we actually go and look at the numbers. And because of the percentage of people that responded and the fact that it wasn't like you didn't have to like log into the server or anything like that. Anyone could have filled it out. He suggested allowing a margin of error of around 6% across all the numbers. So any numbers we talk about, think that could be plus or minus 6% and it would still be accurate.
Sure.
So just have that in the back of your mind. And he said that the results are useful to help people understand what motivates those that go to events, to sort of add to the knowledge of the community and evaluate what might make a good tournament or a good ranked event. And that we should definitely not use the show to make assumptions about what a typical player is, make any sort of generalizations about the whole community, or try and take anything out of context, which I think all seems fair enough. So that's basically a summary of the first 6 slides, Ed. So you can go all the way down to slide number 6 with the 2025 recap. This is how much progress we're making. How efficient is this already?
Cool. I will say I'm going to try and keep up, but there are no numbers on the way that I've opened it. Oh, no, I'm telling a lie. It's bottom right. Ignore me. Let's go on.
Good. Excellent. You can go to the next one. Oh, next slide, please. Oh, I'm channeling my inner COVID response here.
Great.
So this is...
Demonetize that video.
It's all a hoax.
Jesus Christ. Not the official position of Close Order or this bald fraud. Moving on. Talk about something you do know about.
The Environment Agency. No, this is the distribution of events around the UK and Ireland. You can see there's a lot more one-dayers scattered around, sort of 3 times as many one-dayers as there are 5 days. 5 games, sorry. Um, Obviously, I ran last 2025. I ran entirely 2-day events, and I ran 5 of them. So interestingly, in that analysis, I was one event off getting Saffron Walden mentioned alongside Newcastle and Cardiff as the place to be
Well,
for Old World events. So I really wish I'd just done one more to have my little town register in there.
also,
Um,
sorry, just to jump in here. Obviously, I'm friends with Rob. My personal bias showing, love to see Nottingham at the top of the list there. Rob running 40% of all of the 2-day events in the UK is wild.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, he did like 5 over Christmas. So
Yes, yeah.
what I managed to achieve in a year, he did at Christmas.
And
let
these
alone
that
for the
won't
rest.
even be included in these numbers, right? When the report came out, or am I wrong with that?
Yeah, it would have gone all the way up to the end of 2025.
Okay,
I
fair
think.
enough.
So I'm assuming goes to the end of December, but I could be wrong there. So
So it's maybe
we'll
only
find out.
35% of the 2-day events, because all of those ones over Christmas are only 1 day. So, it's only a whole third of them.
I am doing 6 events this year, hopefully. So I am hoping at some point Saffron Walden will appear on this list as a notable location. Will overtake Cardiff. Who wants to go to Cardiff? And yes, so yeah, that's interesting. On the next slide, we have Rich has done some economic analysis about the impact of the Old World event community on the UK economy, which is interesting. So he's obviously he's gone conservative, I think, which is probably sensible, in that he said he reckons it's generated somewhere about £500,000 in the UK economy. And that doesn't include people buying models or anything like that. This is actually just from sort of travel, hotel, beers, that sort of stuff, ticket sales. He has linked in the bottom of the slide, and I haven't read this information in detail, but basically Barclays, the bank, suggests that the average person spends about 300 quid on a 2-day sort of event over the course of a week. So if you use that number instead of Rich's more conservative assumptions, that would bring us up to about £1 million that the Old World tournament scene has generated for UK economy.
Damn.
Which is that's cool. I found that quite staggering, actually, to have £500,000 added to the economy just from people going play toy soldiers.
All right. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so. So you can miss the next one because I haven't got anything, but you have a look at it just in case you want to bring anything out, Ed.
Oh, Keith. Yeah,
Keith.
like I said in the short, it was a real genuine pleasure to be able to say Postmasters that I'm almost as good at Warhammer as Keith
As
Wilkinson.
him.
I'm going to keep saying it till he sees it, and then because I'm pretty sure he'll find that funny.
This is obviously from Keith's perspective. It's you need a 30-player event to get that. Last year, anyway, you did a 30-player event to get that maximum score of 100. And there's some interesting data later about what the community thinks, or this portion of the community thinks, should play the biggest role in ranking. So we'll come on to that in a bit. But the next one is a breakdown of sort of where the players of Old World tournaments tend to come from. Sort of maps population density across the UK, because obviously London and the Southeast has the biggest breakdown on the chart. But I think obviously I probably fall in with my little community in Essex, alongside the boys in Colchester and Norfolk. We probably all fall into sort of east of England, even though, like, for me, I'm obviously very close to London. And it is interesting that obviously the northeast comes out strong, but given the number of very strong players that seem to come from the northeast, in terms of like the Team England makeup, and the number of events that happen sort of Nottingham and above, I did think that number might skew slightly. So it's interesting that it's kind of,
again, it's one man and his 27 kids is doing a lot of heavy lifting in the. But yeah, sorry, what were we talking about? Yeah, no, that is interesting. London and Southeast. I guess there's just a lot of people in London, so that makes sense there.
Definitely. I mean, I have a fair few people travelling up from London, just because it's relatively easy to get to from London. So I see those numbers, but yeah, I guess it is interesting to see how it follows. Um, and um, and yeah, on the next slide, it says, interestingly, the bit I've picked out on that is that about a third of the player base think they have some involvement in running tournaments. Obviously, I'm not 100% sure what defines involvement in running tournaments as a statistic. I guess that's quite personal. But for example, I know I get quite a lot of help
Sure.
at the end of an event from my locals. Shout out to all of them; they're all excellent in helping me like pack away the tables and pack away the terrain, which is all massively appreciated. But I don't know whether they would put themselves down as someone that helps running tournaments, or whether they would say that's actually just something to do because they're local and they want to give me a hand.
Sure.
So that number I found interesting, because I think it suggests that actually a number of people that are very engaged,
Yep.
as in would be engaged enough to fill out this survey, are TOs themselves, or at least involved in event running, so understand fully the amount of work that goes into putting an event on over
Sure.
the course of a weekend. So it's interesting to see whether that actually skews some of the results later, and whether that means some of the results are more or less accurate as a result of quite a high percentage of the people filling out the survey being involved in running events, and therefore potentially thinking a little bit more favourably about TOs and events and things in general. But it's interesting stat I thought to bring out.
Sure.
You've probably got a bit to say about the next one, about people's perceptions of what the best armies are. I didn't necessarily feel anything surprised me here.
Yep.
People think Lizardmen are the worst, and people think Cathay are the best.
Yeah, and that kind of is pretty well represented, I would say. Interesting that are demons more down at the bottom? Is that
No, so I think it's ordered. So
Yeah.
Lizardmen are at the bottom. Although, yeah, I think it's the black is not competitive and very competitive. So
Yeah.
I think this is ranked by people that think those armies are very competitive.
right?
So
I understand.
it looks like probably 1% of people think demons are very competitive. Then Skaven, ogres, and lizardmen, no one thinks they're very competitive. Basically, out of the survey.
Sure, I understand. Yeah,
People's idea.
we're going to say Wood Elves.
Yes, I was gonna drag that, but you go.
Yeah, I think so. The Wood Elf one is really interesting because it makes it almost makes it look like Wood Elves are better than people think they are, which I think is not what you can take away from this data. What you can take away from this data is there are 2 or 3 pretty good players who have had some good results with Wood Elves, and then the general player base of Wood Elves is low. Is basically why their stats are higher than you might expect them to be. But yeah, it's always interesting to see stats and like try and work out what has led to it. I think outside of this, as it says here, the stuff that is like very clearly good and very clearly bad, the stuff that's middling is very hard to genuinely place. You can't do it really with stats because there's a lot of variables. If you've got a small player base army such as Wood Elves, it'll really skew how good they are. Like,
Yeah.
Nicest player in the country, Skaven Kev, definitely skewing the win rate of Skaven down. And I say that with love, and he would say the same. But that will affect things because it's a lower player base army. And that when I was playing Dark Elves at events and doing well with them, I was pulling the win rate of them up because there weren't that many people playing. And then when I stopped playing them, their win rate dropped because there was one person in the UK, I'm talking about specifically, doing pretty well with Dark Elves. So the lower factions, lower play rate factions, the stats are harder to draw meaningful data from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can have a couple of good players to really skew the whole thing. But it is interesting that difference between perception and reality sometimes. If you're happy with if you accept the concept of the reality of the number of players of that faction. And obviously, quite funny to see the number of people that think the Renegade Grounds are like, I don't know how good these are, just because they're just a bit mad.
Sure.
So yeah, interesting. Next slide, please, then, Chris. we obviously have a breakdown of the factions that are being played. Now, clearly, we've known for ages that Warriors of Chaos seem right up there. I thought they'd be on their own, and actually to see Bretonia come right up close behind them, I think that's interesting, because I think I've often seen quite a significant number of Warriors of Chaos players at Saffron events that seems to dwarf everybody else. And obviously there's a different variety of ways you can run Warriors of Chaos, so they don't look like the same army over and over again. They're just interesting to see it broken down like that and see Bretonia catching up. But I think it's obvious because Bretonia were one of the starter factions, so clear that you would have a high number of those players because they're easy to access, easy to get into.
Sure.
And slightly depressing, only 1 in 13 plays were of the legacy factions, so that's quite low. I mean, I tend to get sort of 30 to 40% legacy at my events, so clearly there's a big drop off at other places.
Are we not including vampire counts in that? Because vampire counts
we are including vampire counts, which is interesting because lots of people play vampire counts. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what that says about vampire counts.
Sure.
Because if you're including them in, that means the rest of them are getting a tiny percentage of play at any given event, which is obviously, for those of us that think, and I think the majority of community think, that legacy factions should be in the game. The fact that they are, and lots of TOs are accepting them and allowing them at their events, they're not getting used. And I think ultimately, if a faction just does never get used or never get seen, I think that weakens potentially our argument to the powers that be at Games Workshop that there is demand for these factions to get rules updates, to get support, to potentially get these in the future. Because people say they want them, but then no one's actually using them.
Yeah,
and that might be just because
they're bad.
And you end up in a circle.
Yeah. It's, I mean, not to get political, but it's the whole NHS problem. You know, underfund the Renegade factions. You know, the Renegade faction experience is worse. The delay on me winning games goes up to 2 years in some places, and people are less willing to go to events with the Renegade factions, and like, oh no, I guess nobody wants these because we took them out back and shot them. So yeah, I mean, like, I don't like that as an argument. I think they should just do it. But I mean, I think it's basic. It's based on things other than just, are we, you know, do we want to do it? It comes down to like internal politicking / you know, how much time are you able to spend on each project and those similar details.
No, absolutely, for sure. You've got to have a real passion to play Skaven, haven't you?
A lot of people do, weirdly. A lot of people do.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, there's such a cool faction. Like, just the whole concept of them is amazing. So
sure,
for sure. There's a bit of, on the next slide, there's a bit of sort of qualitative feedback, which is great. And I think a couple of things to bring out really was the quality of life features at events were highlighted, but as things that people enjoyed. So people having lots of space to put minis down, to walk around the tables. Interestingly for me, who's a big proponent of the event pack, clear event packs came out as something that people valued.
Sure.
And actually people said, and this is my reflection from Saffron anyway, people said that the community at events are what brings them back to events, and that actually the vast majority of people they encounter are incredibly warm people, friendly, and events are generally really inclusive places to be, where actually everyone's accepted and everyone actually just comes and has a good time, which, as someone, that's one of the main reasons I do what I do, is really nice to see that coming through at the survey level, people spending time typing out those responses, which is really good. And there's a bit more sort of qualitative feedback coming in some later ones as well. You'd be pleased to hear, Ed, we are now halfway through. So
already?
We're doing well. Already. We're flying, mate.
There were like 70 odd pages. Is this like this is the version that went to print? Because I was talking to Pash about it at Masters, and he said that Richard had put together a report. Maybe he put together a more stripped back version. So cool. All right.
Yes. So reflections from 2026. The first one in that is the motivations for people to go to events, and this is where I think this is the section where TOs, I think, can really learn a lot. So the vast majority of players go to events to meet people, or they go with friends, and that sits alongside people who want to go and play the game and compete. So there's a lot of people you'll be at events who just literally want to meet new people, and they just want to go with mates, and they want to have a laugh with their mates. And actually, I think that's something that we should all bear in mind. That socialization aspect is really important for a lot of people, to get out and meet people and get stuck in. And I noted as well, for the close order coaching, Ed, 60% of players want to learn how to get better.
Very
so
good.
I think out of that 1,200 plus player base that went to events last year, 60% of them,
Well,
this is absolutely nailed on.
Let's say 60% of the 207 people that responded. Like, let's at least start with our feet on the ground. That's still, a big chunk of them. That's 124 people or whatever it is. So yeah,
You'd take 100 coaching students tomorrow, wouldn't you, Ed?
no, that would kill me. That would literally kill me. But I wouldn't say no to a subset of the 120 people who would be maybe interested in getting better at the game.
So yeah, all sign up to Ed's coaching Discord immediately, and we can drown him in coaching clients. And if you want to get better, this is the best way to do it. There's my plug. That's the nice thing I'm saying about you.
Yeah, thank you.
If you're very lucky, he might take you to a garden centre. Next slide, please.
No, I just to be clear, will keep those two sides of my life completely separate.
The next one is talking about rules adjustments, or comp.
Yeah.
Which is obviously a source of controversy within the community. I think there's a few loud voices talking about comp quite a lot, but a significant majority, and you've got to think out of 70% and 35% of the community voted for events that either have minor variations on the Games Workshop rules and FAQs, or no variations on Games Workshop rules and FAQs. About a third, just over a third, were happy with significant changes to the rules, so a lot of comp, and sort of 20% were up for sort of going to different events with different comp in all the different events. So it's interesting that comp seems to take up a lot of discussion in several forums, but actually when it push comes to shove, the vast majority actually just want Games Workshop rules to be tweaked very little, and to leave the game as it is, and actually obviously to try and push Games Workshop to update things rather than end up with the community having to do it. Which, yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think it would be that significant in terms of number of people that don't really want changes to the game, given some of the issues we've had with balance over the course of the last year. Don't know what your thoughts are on that, Ed.
If I speak, I am in trouble.
You were a big fan of comp.
So let's move on to the next slide.
The focus is for improvement in 2026. So think about a tournament you attended in the last 12 months and what was one thing that could have been better. One of the things that seemed to come up a lot was slow play, and either round lengths not being long enough, or a desire for better management of game time. That came up. Okay, it wasn't as significant as the balance issues with Cathay and Vampires, etc., or Dragons in addition, but it was sort of the second top thing people talked about.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I've thought about time management a lot, and so I have
You're so cool.
Either 2 hours 45 or 3 hour long rounds. I feel like in 2 hours 45, 90% of games, 99% of games finish on time, and people get done. You then have a couple of percent of games which drag on, and actually those games, in theory, if I didn't get those individuals to end their game at the end of the round and give me a score, I think they could have kept playing for another hour, 2 hours, and they still would have probably maybe just about then finished their game. So it's interesting that people flag that as an issue, because clearly it must be coming up quite a lot. And that management of game time is interesting, because the solution in my mind to that, rather than drag games out so they're like 3.5 or 4 hour long rounds and have 90% of your players sat around not doing anything, is to use something a bit more obvious to manage time, like chess clocks. But then every time I mention them in the old world context, I think in 40k they're widely accepted. Loads of people use them. Every 40k game I play that's at an event, I'll use a chess clock to manage my own time. I get shut down quite quickly as something that's not what we want to see in the community. And understanding that the time management is a problem for people, but one of the solutions is definitely not the solution, is an interesting discussion, I think.
Yeah, I'd love to use chess clocks at tournaments. Like, there are, I can bring to mind names of players that I know I will struggle to finish games against.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty good at keeping the pace of a game going and hurrying up opponents if there are issues. But there are a handful of people that I know I have to really work to get to the end of 6 games with. I would love to use a chess clock. I think it is very unfair that my opponents are taking 2 hours 15 and I'm taking 45 minutes. It's not a fair allocation of time. Chess clocks are the easy answer, and hopefully we move in that direction as like an optional thing. In 40k, they're not necessarily mandated. Some events will mandate them for top tables on day 2. So by the time you're like 3-0, you've got to use them or whatever. So, maybe there's some variation of that where it's like you're allowed to use them, but they are mandatory at the top tables or something along those lines.
Yeah.
How do chess clocks work when decisions are made in the other player's turn? You just flick them back and forth, basically, for anything. Like, the vibe kind of changes. So sometimes, like, if you're both rolling dice quickly, you won't bother to, like, flip it over for saves. In Old World, you probably want to flip it over for saves for your opponent, because there are a lot more saves in Old World than there are in 40k. So, like, if I shoot into your unit that's got a ward save, a regen, and an armor save, and I'm like, hey, you need to take 3 sets of saves on this, I'd probably put it on your time. But if it's just, a couple of bits and pieces, decision-making definitely gets flicked over to you, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's pretty well-established sort of... So, like, in my event pack for a 40k event, I lay out the situations at which the clock should be switched backwards and forwards between players, and it's pretty well established across the community in 40k at least, when you do and don't do that sort of thing.
Sure.
And actually I found, especially for me, so when I'm playing 40k, if I'm using like my Tyranids, for example, and I've got 150 models on the board and my opponent's got 20, I'm very conscious, as you say, of burning into people's time, because I don't think it's fair just because I've brought a lot of models or I have an army with more decisions to make than someone else.
Yeah.
That doesn't automatically entitle me to take more of the game time up.
Of course not. You get
so
half.
I will put myself on that clock to make sure that I am not getting into a situation where I've lost or won a game because there wasn't sufficient time available, because it works both ways, doesn't it? Sometimes you win some because it only went to turn 3, or sometimes you lose some, and both are sort of frustrating.
Yeah.
I find it very difficult, if I am using a lot of models sometimes, to keep to time, and sometimes I need to accept that I only get to turn 4 in a 40k game, and that's fine, and that's as far as it's taken me. So yeah, interesting.
But me as well. Sorry, one thing. One of the reasons I love them is I like to take time at the start of my turn to think about what I'm doing. I might not do it every turn or every game, because I might have just, like, if the game is very straightforward, then sure. But like, it's great to just step back, take a breath. Like, if you're a fast player in general, taking a little bit more time is good. And you know what makes it so people don't feel like you're taking the mick? Have just a clock and be like, hey, I've got an hour and a half. I'm going to take 5 minutes of my time right now. That's going to feel like a long time to you, but I'm thinking through what I want to do here. And then I'm going to play my turn in like 7 minutes. And you know what?
Yeah.
If you didn't have the time reminder there, you might feel like I'm unfairly allocating my time. I'm probably still going to use less than half of the hour and a half, less than the 1.5 hours that I've allocated to me, because I can play quickly. I know all my stats. I can roll dice quickly, yada, yada. But it just gives a little bit of almost protection from the person who wants to think things through more.
No, absolutely. And I think you'll see the best players do that a lot. I think they'll take that time at the start of their turn to plan out what they're going to do. The turn is quite quick. But yeah, often, especially if you get to a situation where you're halfway through the game and something's gone wrong and you need to take the time to make a key set of decisions about positioning or movement or where to put a buff or whether to make a charge or not. Sometimes, as you say, you do just need to sit for 10 minutes. And that feels like ages if you're not on a clock. But if you are, you can quite happily take that time, knowing that you can make it up elsewhere, and it just generally keeps the pace of the game up. But
Yeah,
it's in old world for some reason it's not. People don't like it.
Yeah,
I guess that's fair enough.
I just want to touch on what Matthew's saying. The knowing stats thing is huge. You've got to remember we still have a lot of beginners. Yeah, absolutely. But like, if you clock out, we don't take you out back and shoot you. You just don't get to use the other person's time that they should be fairly allocated in this competitive game that we're playing. Both players should get half the time. If your army is like it takes a lot longer to play, you need to either maybe not play that army if it's going to be a problem for you to finish in a reasonable time, or be more practiced and understand where to do things, or not do things that don't matter. Like a lot of Imperial Guard players, for example, just don't shoot their lasguns because it's like, oh, I might do 0 to 1 wounds, and that wasn't worth the time that it took me to roll and get everything done. If you clock out, then that's not the end of the world. It's just you don't get to do more game turns, and your opponent gets to use their fair allocation of time.
Yeah, and I think even in 40k, it's not mandated, and I would never mandate it in Old World. I normally, it starts to become important when the games really matter. So, as you said, game day 2 onwards, everyone that's competing to win the event needs to, in my opinion, be playing a fair amount of time because they're at the top end of the event. They're likely to be the better players. They're likely not to be new or overwhelmed by having a clock or something like that. But they'll be at the top. They'll be competing for the event overall. And actually, I think it becomes important that both players feel like they've had a fair shot in terms of time. And clearly, a lot of people are raising this as a problem in the game. So I think it feels like we should try and address it if it's going to continue to be for people. But it's interesting. The other thing that people raised, we've spent a long time on clocks, but is unpredictable venue quality. And actually, people are flagging that they are prioritizing places where they've got space, where they've got comfortable places to sit or anything like that. And they've got good quality terrain and places where they've got decent toilets and food and drink and things like that. So I think that's something for TOs to think about when you're choosing your venue. I feel like in Old World, I think the tolerance for freezing cold sports halls with one toilet between 100 people probably doesn't fly as well as it would in a 40k setting where they're all a bunch of slobs. No, obviously I'm being mean. I go to tournaments.
To be clear, one of the reasons that it doesn't fly is that 40k's, the top end is more competitive and there is a bigger competitive drive for tournaments in 40k. But a lot of the appeal is you put up with going to a sports hall with expensive, truck food with limited bathroom space, yada yada, and you're crammed in. But you're doing that because you're going to a 400-person super major, and that's a big event, and that is the trade-off. If you're then going to that 400-person event, but your section of it is only 8 or 12 players, you really gotta step your game up if you want to attract people to come back for a second event.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So that's improvements for 2026. You can skip 2 slides to go to high interest in rankings. This is a bit of a run through of the interest in rankings, in what a ranking season should look like, and what how an event should sort of position itself within the ranking system. It is interesting what I thought just on this first slide. I won't dwell on it very long, but only about half of the players who responded to the survey were actually interested in competing for the Masters. A lot of players are interested in the rankings, but actually only half felt that they were interested in markers. And you've got to think this is a very self-selected survey because it's people that go to a lot of events have filled this survey out. Like, this isn't just sort of a random community-wide thing. This is sort of self-selected its way down to already quite an engaged group of people. So for what is already a really engaged group of people, less than half being interested in competing for the Masters, I think is interesting. Do you think that feels low, Ed?
Not massively. I think if we only, and I air quotes only, because I actually think the response rate on this is actually probably comparable or maybe even better than local elections. So in terms of getting people to go out and vote for anything that isn't a general election or respond to a survey, I think the response rate here is actually pretty good. Given that there's 207 people surveyed, that's not to say that these are the only people involved, but like theoretically that's the top 100 players in the country who want to compete for the top 24 slots at the Masters. That doesn't feel particularly low, and assuming that there are other people who didn't respond would also be interested, sure, I think that seems like a pretty reasonable percentage of the community.
Fair enough. Happy on that point. You can skip the next one, because the one after that is how you sort of reward a event in terms of its points. And I think this is an active discussion at the moment. I don't think any decisions have been made for 2026 rankings yet. And I think I've always been someone that feels that just ranking an event based on a number of players, I think isn't necessarily... I don't think that's a particularly great way of determining how many points a certain event should be worth based on your placings. I think obviously big events are important and it is great, but I think actually having just event size being the only metric that determines how important an event is, I think is problematic from a stats perspective. But I appreciate organising another system is very, very difficult, and that actually really the main lever anybody has to make any differentiation between events is probably the number of players over the number of games, without having to start thinking about seedings or sort of chess style ranking systems or anything like that, which I don't think anyone's necessarily got the time for at this stage. But this question was sort of asking what players thought was important in rewarding an event in terms of its points, and the highest result actually interestingly came out as people preferring the idea that events that have better players at them should score you more points than events that necessarily are the big ones, and this has come out on the top. I think to me that would probably represent the fairest way of doing a ranking system, if you could come up with the sort of back end stuff that would need to work that out, all the calculations that would need to be done to do that. Because actually, if you play 4 out of 5 of your games against top end players, you might come halfway down the event and not get many points, but actually you feel like I've played really good, difficult games of Old World here. But then you go to a massive event that's got 200 people at it, and 4 out of 5 of your games are people that's their first ever tournament just because you got lucky with the ranking system, and because it's a bigger event, it's taken a while to get you to the top of the pyramid. So it's interesting that I think there is that interest in a different way of doing things sitting at the top of this survey anyway. So yeah, I wonder what your thoughts are on that actually about rankings.
Yeah, like I mean, you know that I agree with you in terms of big events not necessarily translating into this is the easiest to win. Like obviously the Masters is a great example of that's going to be the hardest event that I play in 2026. I've done it already. Yeah. It was January. Like, when's the next really hard event? Really, really, really hard event going to be? January 2027 when I go to the Masters then. But I'm going to win this one, so watch this space. But that's not going to be one of my scores on the Masters ranking. Like, I could, in fact, let me pull it up now and I can tell you how many points I got for that. For anyone who doesn't know, Old World rankings, you get 100 points as your absolute cap. And right now, to get the 100 points, you have to win an event of 32 players or more. That is the current system in place.
It's 30. Yeah.
Yes. So my scores last year, I had a 92, an 88, an 89, and I think another 88. So I was winning tournaments in the realm of like 22 to 18 players, I think were my four top scores. For coming 6th at the Masters, which again, it's going to be the hardest event that I play, 68 points. That's not going to scratch the sides. That's going to be my I don't know, 7th or 8th highest rank for the year, depending on how many tournaments I go to, how well I do. So I think it's interesting there. There was a stat that I saw in here that we just sort of flicked past, and I can't actually remember what it was. So yeah, that's no good at all. But yeah, basically, I agree. The harder the event, the better the players there. It would be interesting to see how that could change the rankings. Now, how do you do that in a way that's fair and works? Oh, that's not my job. I can't come up with that. If I had a list of solutions in front of me, I could evaluate them. But I think, am I going to right now come up with the best way to do it with no forethought and 20 seconds of prep time? Nah. So I'm not even going to try and come up with the best formulation for that.
No, absolutely. It's interesting as well because I think some of it depends on how established you think the community is. So it feels like for Old World, I think there's still a lot of growth potential within the community.
Sure.
And that from these stats, at least, a lot of people do actually quite like seeing their rankings, even if they're not that bothered about trying to go for the Masters.
Yeah.
And actually, I think rankings, therefore, do have an important role to play for those people that are motivated by them.
Yeah.
And I think if we put those two things together, i.e. a community that still has room for growth and the community that there's a chunk of it that does care about these things, I think everything that we can do as event organisers and as a sort of competitive community can do to help that community grow and get more people involved and more people excited for it is great. And I think potentially getting us to a situation where certain events are just not worth attending because they're not big enough, I think risks going in the wrong direction at this stage. I think potentially when you've got like 40k and there's massive events, there's 500 player events every weekend, like fair enough, potentially you do need a better system. You do need to put some differentiation between a 250 player event and a 20 player event. That's fine. It's a big community, very mature community, with lots of reasons to get into it that aren't just rankings. But for Old World, when it's quite small, if people that care about it start going away from smaller events and only ever attending big ones, I don't know if that I don't know if it does. I could be wrong. I don't know if that necessarily is a good thing for our local smaller TOs.
I think that
trying
would be
to get
very sad if that is how things went. Because I mean, if we're just gonna call a spade, who's going to be running large events, and what's the quality of the event going to be? The model that they have in 40k is the UKTC, which does what it does. It's a big event and there's lots of players. But, if you're used to going to events with, maybe in a nice venue, which is not drafty as shit, loud as shit, with, hockey players playing separated by a net from one side of the room to you, which is... The last time I was in Manchester, I was in a room, a gym, and there was a net between me and the people playing volleyball or hockey or something on the other side, and my table with all my models was up against the net to the point where it was pushing the net out because we did not have enough space there. So like, if you're saying, oh, would you like to go to 400 player events, it's like, well, is it going that way? Is it taking away from having events with really nice terrain and themed boards and, more of a personal touch to them? I don't think that's a move in the right direction.
And I think it's come through in this survey. I think people are frustrated about the variation in venue quality across different events that we already have. So I think we should be trying to encourage high quality events. And encouraging high quality events means those events cost a lot of money to run. I know what it cost me to make a board of terrain for one of my Saffron boards, which I'd argue are, if I'm being sort of blowing my own trumpet, I think are some of the best boards going in terms of especially my new stuff. It's a lot of money to put a board together. And so without me finding tens of thousands of pounds...
Is it time to market yourself as the premium Old World tournament organizer in the UK? Because every single tournament that is going to be run for the Saffron Slam is going to have tournament coverage, and the terrain's pretty good. And I'm going to be there. Now, you're going to be there as well, so that takes it down a peg or two. But
I knew you couldn't just be nice to me.
I've done it multiple times this episode, but you're correct. It would physically pain me. Yeah, maybe that's a branding angle to take. The UK's number one premium event. Well, who can say? Who can say?
Indeed. Move on quick. I'm going to get a red face. So the last couple of slides, you'll be pleased to hear, everybody. We're getting there. We're almost done. We've just hit the hour mark, so we can do this.
You've
Um,
put a really good pace in this. This has been engaging and interesting. So well done.
Oh, very kind of you. So talking about event, we've come across this earlier, but it's hammering home the point about the vast majority of the community don't seem to be motivated by having lots of comp and rule changes. They'd rather just play the rules the Games Workshop put out and have Games Workshop update them properly rather than trying to have the community update them. You can skip one because it's qualitative, and then we get into the last few slides, which are these green and red bars, which are the sort of comfort scores. It took me a little while to get my head around what these actually mean. So they're basically a question's asked, and the responder they can pick one option between the responses, everything from not at all the way to very. And there's 5 options they can choose from about how comfortable they are with certain types of changes or something at an event. So for the first one, just to explain that, why Richard's put there that's plus 64, the question asked is how comfortable players would be with TO setting additional limits on the units each army can use. 76% of the respondents responded positively to that, saying either they'd be comfortable or very comfortable with TOs setting additional limits on the units. And 11-12% responded negatively, saying they would not at all be comfortable or they would be uncomfortable with TOs changing units on limits. You take that positive score and then you deduct the negative score, and that gives you your overall plus 64. So 76 minus 11/12 rounding error gives you that net score of 64% in favour.
Yeah.
You can draw a good conclusion from that in terms of TOs setting limits on units that each army can use. A good majority of players are in favour of TOs making those changes. Obviously, much fewer people were happy with people altering points limits to give some armies more or less points than others. So that's, I guess, would be the example of that would be the square-based comp. So slightly in favour, but still effectively neutral if you include the 6% margin of error, where altering points was something they thought TO should do, or in terms of giving other armies more points or less points. And then obviously very much negative in terms of changing stats on units or changing special rules or TOs, trying to balance the game like that. So I don't think there's anything sort of world groundbreaking there. I think that's pretty much as I expected. In terms of, I think a lot of events do put the rule of 3 in place, that you can't spam stuff even if the rules suggest you could spam more. I say I've waived it for the Doomseekers on the Slayer list, but interesting that the square-based comp equivalent is about 50-50 in the community. And then obviously I've never advocated for TOs changing stats or special rules. I just don't think any TO has the sort of overarching view of enough games and enough armies and enough rules to know whether that would be something that people would be happy with or be capable of doing.
Sure. Cool.
And then next one, just very quick. Vast majority of people want TOs to rule for clarity, even if it goes against sort of immersion or what players believe the rule should be.
Sorry, mate, just to double check. Is that the one with the 84 and 17 on it?
84 and 17, yeah.
Yeah, because there's nothing else. The screen is just white. I don't know if there's something wrong on my end or if it's... In fact, let's just hit F5 and see if it loads in the rest of the... Oh, there we go. Okay, it was on my end.
I was going to say, yeah, it's definitely loading on my end. So, so I think broadly, we don't need to linger on it. Most TOs should be ruling for clarity rather than immersion. So people just rule it as it's written and see how it goes from there.
Sure.
And then feeling empowered to judge, which is the next one. This is exploring missions is the next one. Sorry, which is interesting because it's something that I do a lot. I play around with missions. Big vote in favour of TOs using custom missions at event. I didn't think it would be that much in favour, again, I was surprised that there was quite a big or a decent positive margin for TOs using unique system of ranking players and deciding the winner.
Sure.
The only way that initially came to mind as how you would do that is include sort of sportsmanship and hobby scores into the overall scoring. But actually, when you ask people if that's how TOs should do it, it's about 50-50 again. So that it drops off massively for the people that think that having results depend on fair play and hobby as an important part. So interesting there that people were up for unique ranking systems, but not necessarily up for
because it's still
non-gaming factors to come in.
it's still got to be how well you play the game. Like, you should absolutely get recognition for being a good sport and for also painting really well. And I love that, like, basically across the board, as far as I've seen, there are rewards for those, but that doesn't make you good at Warhammer, and that's what the tournament is about.
Yeah, no, exactly. And trying to separate that out, and I think for a lot of TOs that I've seen, and I know do it, the bigger prizes at the Saffron events are for sportsmanship and for hobby.
Yeah.
Like, if you win the overall event, you'll probably win 50 quid's worth of vouchers, and that's great. But actually, as we saw with Tom, you'll win a custom painted character if you get most sporting, which I think in my mind that means more.
Sure.
I think maybe. But yeah. Feeling power to judge is interesting. There is a big positive favour for judges giving penalty scores for submitting lists late, or for people playing slowly, or having unpainted models. Now, this is interesting for me because I have never given penalty scores to anyone for anything. Now, I'm always quite fortunate in that I obviously push for my events to try and take a slightly more chilled angle and approach to the competitive scene, just to say, for experienced players, this is an opportunity to chill out a bit for a weekend, and for newer players, this is an opportunity for you to meet lots of people and play some people that are going to help you through your game rather than try and just crush you. So potentially I am less likely to get people be too much of a knob, but I have had to sort of ban people. I have said to people, unfortunately you're not welcome back. I've had to write to people, had to deal with grumpy people, because I've been running events for coming on 6 years now, so these things happen. I've never yet given penalty scores, and it's always struck me as something that's quite difficult to administer. Unless, I guess, I set out like a penalty system or something in the event pack in advance that says, if you do X, Y will happen. Now, I have like a code of conduct which has like a card system in it, where I effectively say, if you're an idiot, you will get a written warning from me, and I will expect behaviour to improve, and if it doesn't, I will ask you not to come back. And actually, in 99% of cases, I've had to write to people. The individual's either written back to me and said that they appreciated the honesty, and that they would probably take a little bit of a break from the competitive scene or whatever, because it was getting a bit much for them, and actually they needed someone to tell them. Or people have kicked off massively, and I've said, okay, fine, we'll leave it there then, and unfortunately, we won't see you again.
We'll leave it there, and we'll leave you there.
Yeah, exactly, and it's fine. Like, sometimes some people have different expectations, don't they? But yeah, I've never thought about how you would give a penalty score and how you would do it in such a way that sort of in the heat of the moment, which is when you'd have to give a penalty score, you need to do it whilst the situation is hot.
Sure.
Because you can't do it 2 days later. How you would do that without either inflaming the situation or being in a position where you feel like you've got to give out maybe potentially something unfair or something that could fundamentally alter the whole structure. I don't know, tricky, but people are in favour of it, so maybe I need to look into it a little bit more. And then, as I said earlier, it flips back to being, it's actually more positive than I thought, but players to use chess clocks, etc., so games don't run late, is got a positive result, but potentially not as high as you would need. But it comes back to people's biggest issue being timekeeping, or one of the biggest issues being timekeeping.
Yeah.
And then we're almost there. Creative hobby being encouraged. Obviously, everybody, 90% of people in favour of allowing non-Games Workshop sculpts, 3D prints, that sort of things at their events. So just a couple of Games Workshop employees saying no to that, I think. And then obviously huge support for requiring armies to be battle ready as well. I thought it would be lower than that, because I know I have had people say to me that they're not buying a ticket to Saffron because they asked people to paint their armies, and that they didn't think that was acceptable. So I did think that might be a slightly bigger portion of the community, but clearly a lot of people, at least from the regular event going community, are in favour of being battle ready. And I think as the game has aged, I think that is important to how people value their experience at a tournament, is to play against another painted army. you play on nice board, nice terrain, 2 armies fully painted. It adds to the kind of overall experience, doesn't it? Playing against grey plastic is never quite as fun.
It's honestly a little wild to me that that's just a thing that people expect, that they can go to a tournament to play without painting their models. And my perspective is skewed. You know, I got into the hobby. I'd never painted a full army before I went to my first tournament. And I didn't go to my first tournament until I got back into the hobby post taking an 8-year break. So I played from 8 to 18 for 10 years. I took an 8-year break, got back into the game at 26. And then I went to my first tournament with an army that I painted through running the first army I just painted because I wanted to go to an event and I understood that that was the requirement. And coming from 40k, like, the idea of an event having unpainted models is weird to me. And I'm sure there are some, but that's just not part of the world that I've existed in. So it always feels a little odd. And like, you know, for smaller events or like RTTs at a local shop where it's just like, hey, we want to get people playing. We've got a local scene of like 10 people and we're going to run an event and expect 6 people to come on Sunday and play 3 games. Sure. Yeah. That's like, that mirrors my expectation of the event, to be like, hey, try and paint them. If you haven't, that's a shame. But yeah, for like a GT or something, I would expect stuff to be painted.
I mean, it is a really tricky balance as a TO, because you don't want to exclude people. Obviously, you want your event to have as many people at it as possible, and one way you can do that is to lower the barrier of entry.
Sure.
And for a lot of people, painting an army is a barrier. And committing to getting 2,000 points of Empire, Skaven, whatever painted, it's not an insignificant task. For those of us that have been in the hobby for ages, you can bash an army out very quickly or accept that you can't use it if it's not. But it is a barrier for people. But then on the flip side, you also want to make sure the people that are coming to your event are having the best experience possible. And I think being in a position where you're playing against an unpainted army, it does detract from the experience, I think, in my opinion, because especially if you've put a lot of effort into getting your army done, you've worked until 3 a.m. to get it finished, which I know lots of people do before an event, and actually then you turn up and the person across the board to you hasn't got their army finished, or is just playing with grey models. I think for me personally, that would detract from my event experience, and I know others would probably agree that part of the immersion is playing against painted stuff. It's such a hard balance to get.
Let's not beat around the bush here. The bandwagoning that happens a lot more in 40k, where someone turns up with the new hotness, that is significantly reduced because you have to paint an entire army. And if we're being realistic, Warhammer Fantasy is harder to paint than 40k in terms of the number of models, and also you're not just painting entire suits of armor usually. So there is less bandwagoning done in the hobby and at tournaments because of the paint requirements. What I'm saying to you, if you're on the fence about whether painting requirements are good, you would have faced 2 or 3 times as many Cathay armies with balloons if you didn't have to, if, you know, people didn't have to build and paint them, or borrow from Callum, despite, you know, getting into Masters, playing loads of Cathay lists while being, you know, objectively a terrible player. Pash.
Yeah.
See if I can summon him again. Without ever having painted his own Cathay army up until the Masters.
Yeah. And I think there is, in addition to that, there's an important distinction between having a battle-ready army and having like something amazing. Sure. And I think most 99.9% of players, if the army across the table is battle-ready but not a work of art that Da Vinci would be proud of, I don't think anyone's got a problem with that. So I don't think it's a barrier in that takes a time to get paint on models. But I would always try and say to people that you're not being judged on the quality of what you're producing. And I think if you've put effort in and you've put work in, you've put time in, and it's meant a lot to you, that comes across regardless of whether it's Golden Demon standard or you've used contrast paints for everything and you've done the best you can with the skill that you have. And I think actually it's the putting in of the effort to get it done that I think everybody across the table to you appreciates, regardless of quality, I think. And trying to get that in your mind, that if you are a bit slow at painting or you're nervous about showing off models that you don't think are that good, then I would say I've never ever seen any tournament, and I've probably had over 6 years, probably had 1,000+ players come to my events, and I've never seen anyone be judged for the quality of their work. that they've put together. So
I don't want to say this, and like if I don't compliment your models when we play, it's not like a thing that I do regularly. It's not something that I make sure to compliment my opponent's models. Maybe I should do that. Maybe that'd be nice. But in terms of the armies that I've complimented, the vast majority of them are objectively mediocre. But if they've done something that's striking at a tabletop level, I'm like, damn, that I love how that stands out. You know, if it's something eye-catching, I'm like, hell yeah, love that. Like, is it painted? Can I see the beads of sweat painted onto the brow of a model? Of course I can't. That's ridiculous. But I love that, like, from 2 feet away, I look and I'm like, that is objectively very striking. It's cohesive. I love it. I love what you've done with the basing, whatever it is. Like, so most of the times that I've really liked someone's army, it's not because they've painted well. I'm not a big fine art person. If I go into an art gallery, I'm not necessarily looking at the stuff that's very technically well painted and be like, this makes me feel something. But I'll look at something and be like, oh, damn, that painting that's painted to, like, you know, a level that's competent. But I'm like, ooh, that's, you know, that is eye-catching. I love that. That's something a little bit different. That's what stands out to me.
Absolutely. And it's definitely something, when you say about pointing out stuff you like about someone else's army, it's a great conversation starter if you're a bit nervous about chatting to someone at an event.
True.
Get your opponent, have a look at their army, go across and find something you think cool, because every single army you play, someone will have done something unique. Someone will have thought of something that you've never thought of.
Yeah.
And actually picking that out, it starts a conversation, but also for potentially that person you're playing across the board might be a bit nervous about how they've done, the quality of their painting, and actually to have someone go, oh, that Demon Prince is amazing, or oh, I love that conversion you've done on that Empire guy with the handgun. Like,
sure.
You will find something in someone's army, especially in Old World where there's loads of models, that there's a huge opportunity to find something really cool that someone's done. There's a guy in my community, Ben, who's got a Orcs and Goblins army, and he's got a load of stuff that his daughter did, with like his spell cards and things like that, and then he's got a big Foot of Gork template which looks super cool, and I think Ben's relatively new to the hobby, and he won't mind me saying that he wouldn't consider himself to be a Golden Demon painter, but actually he's got some really cool stuff in his army, and he's got it all done and it looks great. And a big Orcs and Goblins army where there's loads of big blocks of greenskins across the board just looks cool, and then you add in all those extra bits that he's done with his daughter and stuff like that, and it really adds to it. And I think it's really, really great, and we should encourage that as best we can. But the only way you get that cool stuff sometimes is saying, actually, you should get your armies painted, get them done, get them on the table, and get them to an event. And we could probably leave it there. The last slide is massive support for legacy factions, which won't come as a surprise to everybody, although they do say that people are keen for minor community rule changes rather than significant community rule changes for legacy factions. It's interesting, in the question it put Renegades pack from Square Based as significant changes. I've always felt that Renegades were pretty light touch, as they're just sort of the bare minimum you need to do to get them to be slightly more viable than they are, but they've put them in the significant changes category. So, but there is positive across the board for legacy factions and for changing them. And that, Ed, is the Old World survey.
Great. And I like this last slide as well. Encouraging to foster inclusion, encourage competition, and be transparent. Yeah. Just be nice. Yeah.
Be nice to everybody. Don't be a dick.
Perfect. Lovely. Well, thank you for leading that one. That was good to go through and get some interesting details. And also, I would not have sat and read it on my own. I'd be converting some models that I've got here. Oh, that's elf size, but it's really far away. You can't tell it what it is. Oh, it's a secret. And or just, just unwinding after the other bits and pieces that I've done. But we do have something else that we should talk about. Something that is vitally important, and something that I just want to take a moment to say thank you to everyone who has contributed to this, and that is the podcast questions, because if you are a channel member of Longbeard or above, you are able to ask podcast questions in the podcast question section, and I think it should even show pretty well on screen here. Yes, it does. Look at that. If I zoom in, no, that's not going to work. All right, never mind. I'll take it off screen because it doesn't actually show very well, so it's just going to be distracting. Oh no, I got rid of you. Oops. What a shame. That definitely was a mistake. Thank you, Callum, for your support. It's a Tracian Woodsman Elf, I'm certain of it. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Wouldn't you like to
Oh.
know, Weatherboy? And also, thank you, Petrus. I appreciate the donation. I said, thank you for the fun content you make and the strong positive impact you have. That is, I hope that's you know, if it, like, I'm 32, it's, am I supposed to be thinking about legacy? Do I think that I'm important enough to have a legacy? No. But if there was a legacy to have, I would hope that it would be making the old world a more fun and interesting place without being up my own ass. So, Callum's sent us another picture of a seagull. It says, well, he actually says, there's nothing to talk about. So what do you think about this seagull? That is the least rodent-looking seagull I've ever seen. I assume you're looking at them as well.
Like excellent plumage.
Yeah, that's. You could have told me that was some sort of long-faced dove, and I'd have been like, I don't know enough about birds to dispute that. But
No, it could be feeding on like the freshest Scottish salmon. That look at that.
yeah, it's cleaner than your windows, mate. You know, have some pride.
Whee!
Have a clean up. Whee! Richard says, if a great spirit longmer was smaller than his friends, would it be a great spirit shortmer? I, as someone here who is technically below the national average height for my age group, I would say I would not appreciate it if my friends called me a shortmer. That would cause me some level of discomfort, and I would not be pleased with it. So I think we should not bully the vertically challenged longmers and instead get them a medieval torture rack so that they too can be long boys. Absolutely, stretch out that spine. It's, you know, I'm sure that's how it works, right?
Definitely. I wonder as well. Should it be a great spirit shortmer? Does it need the word great? If it's
You're just doubling down on being rude to your mates. This is why I don't talk to you outside of the show, because this is what I get. Vesper says, if a longmer, what would a longmer long for if a longmer could long for long? I don't know. Maybe for the balloons to not be nerfed, so that people don't realize that actually the longmer is incredibly cracked. And I'm not saying that it needs to be nerfed, but if there was a second thing, like after Cathay Wave 1 gets nerfed in the like balloons and cannons, the next thing on the chopping block is definitely the longmer. It's definitely the second best thing that they have access to right now.
Yeah. And if a forlorn longmer could long not for long, would he long for long at all?
Excellent. Which doesn't need an answer, but you just wanted to prove that you also can do tongue twisters. So,
well, I thought it wouldn't be fair
enough
if you just had to read the tongue twisters and I didn't have to go at one.
Tommy says, who had the best WTC uniforms and why was it the USA? I actually can't picture what Americans were wearing. I obviously wasn't there. I'm going to say, shout out to the one that I've got, the England shirt. I think the England shirt's really nice. I really like it.
Yeah.
And also, not technically the correct answer, but a shout out to the Netherlands Lions, or the Dutch Lions, I should say. The orange and black sport shirt that we took to the Open. That was great. I will probably get both. Like, I'm hoping to move in the not too distant future, and if I do that, I'm hoping to have a better background behind me. You know, maybe I put all of those medals that I keep winning, but I'd also like to frame my international shirts and put them up behind me. I think that would be a nice background to have. Yeah. Any opinions on the international kit that you didn't event for?
Well, I've quite enjoyed the. I think I preferred last year's Ipswich Town kit compared to this year's. I really quite liked the pink shirt, and I got myself the pink shirt with the Ed Sheeran logo on it. So yeah, that's my contribution.
Very relevant to the WTC shirts, which was the question asked. You can't take them anywhere, can you? More Able Swimmer says, because you never take the jacket off, do you have to use a different shower gel when washing in the morning? I am quite enjoying that the ribbing has turned to you always wear a jacket. Which is, I mean, fine. Is it weird to have as a vaguely public persona, have a uniform to be recognizable in? I don't think it is. Also, this is a different jacket, and I'm sorry to make you sad, but this is not the green one. So
yeah, it's different colours, isn't it?
Yeah. I do have to take them off to change them. Oof.
But when you've got some close order merch, you'll never have to change it.
Yeah, true.
Make sure you wear it in the shower. Happy days.
That sounds great.
That'll get you many sessions in the garden centre, that's for sure.
Yeah. I don't know why this is a thing now, but sure. That again, this is why I don't talk to you. You show a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of the person that's inside, and immediately you're ragging on me. And it's not fair. Just because I do it to you doesn't mean you can do it to me. Amy says, what is both of your opinions on the current iteration of Frenzy? Does it need a change? And if so, what kind? You go first. No riding on my coattails. Have a thought.
No, my thought is that Frenzy is such a massive disadvantage that the advantage when you actually make it work should be more significant than it currently is.
I don't disagree with that. I think even if they just put it back to the 1.0 version, which is you always get the extra attack, but you have to charge, that is a very clear cause and effect. It's a very strong buff. Realistically, if we think about it, that is an incredibly strong buff. Most units or most models in Old World have one attack. Now, the value of Frenzy goes down if you have more than one attack. So, Boar Boys, for example, they don't get twice as good with Frenzy. They get 50% more attacks, which is where I go, you really probably shouldn't do this. I know it's cheap, but I don't see the value there. But I think if they reverted to the 1.0 version of it, that would be better. I think the problem is it's too easy to bait around. You have to put a lot of commitment into making it work. And this sounds hypocritical, because if you see the Wood Elf list that I've been writing and playing, it's a lot of Wild Hunt with Wild Riders. Is that the only thing that Wood Elves can do to bring actual damage? Kind of, yeah. So, I might not like it, but you kind of have to make it work sometimes.
Yeah.
Cool. Then we've got more. They'll want us to read this. Alvis Thundercake says, only as long as Daddy Longmer loitered locally lest he linger to love Long, which was in response to the if of forlorn Longmer, yada yada. And then Vesper says, but for as long as Daddy Longmer lifts, he loves Long, despite Long looming, never lasting, and loitering, love loosening. He learns laws of longing for longing. Long lasts past loving loudly, which I don't think any of that makes any sense at all. I'm assuming there's been some psychedelics slipped into your, that whatever you're drinking, because you two are off your rocker. But thank you for sharing that moment with me and by extension, Lewis. Great. Vesper says, I don't have any questions for today. Appreciate our poetry. Cool. Very good.
Oh, one word for it.
Richard says, after the FAQ, will it be cool to play Cathay, or will people still call me a metagamer? If they get nerfed to a bottom of A, top of, well, probably a B tier army, it will suddenly be the hipster choice, I think, to go for.
Yeah. They just look amazing, don't they?
Vesper proving himself a liar. Actually, I have one. What FAQ changes would make Dark Elves a better pick? Also, I heard a rumor somewhere that dragons might be increased in price. Thoughts? Well, they can't be increased in price, because then they wouldn't fit into lists. Without the match play guide being lifted, that just isn't gonna work.
They've hit the limit there, haven't they?
Yeah. And what FAQ changes would make Dark Elves better? I'm going to give credit to Callum for this, in that he actually thinks that they're not awful in 1.5, but it's just stuff like Cathay that make them unplayable. So yeah, the changes are nerf Cathay, because they don't do well into them. But yeah, I think you just need to make stuff better, and the way that elves can be made better with an FAQ is probably not through rules changes, unless you're Murderous now applies to all weapon attacks or something like that, which gives you a little bit of a boost. It's probably going to be, you can bring 20% more stuff, and if you can bring 20% more stuff, that's a big boost to an army like that.
Absolutely.
Richard says, how many zombies can you fit inside a 2026 Honda Civic? I don't think they make, that's not a car that exists, right? I think Honda Civics are only ever exclusively 20 years old. So they make them, but they're kept on a lot until, at least 10 years past the release date. So I couldn't buy a 2017 Honda Civic today. I'm fairly confident, but there's probably 10,000 2016 Honda Civics that are on the market, which haven't ever been driven, just ready for, in 10 years time, a 10-year used 2026 Honda Civic. I'm not getting paid by Honda. I've just said the name of their brand and car a lot. Now, did that add any value to them as a company? Objectively,
At
no.
least 5 people.
Should they still pay me for doing so? I think so. If you are Honda and you're watching this video, or any major car company, with the exception of Tesla, because I think you're a knobhead, I am open to discussing some sort of sponsorship for the channel. Now, you can send me an email to, just directly, you can message me on Discord. You can find a link to the Close Order Discord down below. And you don't have to be a large multinational corporation to join the Close Order Discord. If you just want to take part in the community, I think the community is pretty good. And in fact, the Vesper, who does some modding for me, thank you so much, Vesper, really appreciate what you do, recently said that he hasn't had to do anything recently. So, the state of the community is pretty great.
It is good, and he is definitely a knobhead.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Amy. Amy very generously gifted 5 Close Order memberships. Thank you very much. If you have received a Close Order membership, please do make sure to thank Amy if you're here to receive it. And also ping me in the Needs Role section on Discord, which is where you will receive your Discord benefits. So, if you are a member on YouTube and you haven't got the tag on Discord, do ping me in Needs Role. I will apply the tag there, and you will be able to access the VIP sections of the channel. Anything else for you?
Nope, that's it. Goodbye.